The galactic concordant floated in the void like a crown made of glass and light. Its silver rings shimmered as they turned, catching the glow of distant suns. Within its walls lived the voices of 800 civilizations, diplomats, traders, philosophers, and spies, all gathered in a place where words were meant to matter more than weapons. For Ambassador Catherine Jiao of Earth, that idea had become difficult to believe. She stood before her window in the human quarters, a simple cup of tea cooling in her hands. From here, the view was breathtaking, rivers of starlight cut across the darkness, and below the transparent floor, she could see the endless spin of the concordant city layers. But her reflection in the glass was what held her attention. Tired eyes, streaks of gray in her black hair, and the subtle stiffness of someone who had carried too much weight for too long. 5 years, she murmured. 5 years to prove we belong. The door chimed. Her assistant's voice came through the comm. Ambassador, the council is ready for you. Catherine took a slow breath and set her cup down. The air inside her quarters smelled faintly of recycled oxygen and the lavender spray she always used to calm herself. She straightened her uniform, dark blue with a silver earth insignia at the collar, and touched the communication pin on her chest. Understood. Tell them I'm on my way. Today was the day. The culmination of every argument, every sleepless night, every setback and insult endured. Humanity's petition for full membership in the Galactic Empire would finally be decided. It wasn't about pride, it was about survival. Membership meant protection under galactic law. It meant equal access to trade routes, defense pacts, and most importantly, respect. For half a century, humans had been treated as guests in a house where every door remained locked. They were allowed to observe, never to lead, to trade, never to decide, to speak, but rarely to be heard. Catherine intended to change that. The council chamber was a cathedral of alien brilliance, a sphere the size of a stadium, lined with tiered platforms that glowed in soft shades of blue and gold. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in floating seats arranged in concentric circles. The air shimmered with the hum of translation drones. When Catherine stepped onto the central platform, the crowd fell quiet. At the highest point of the chamber sat High Executive Zethor of the Valoran Empire. He was massive, 8 feet tall, his body armored in living metallic plates that rippled like oil under light. 2 silver eyes watched her with cold amusement. The Valorans had ruled the Empire for 6 centuries, not because they were wise, but because they were feared. Ambassador Jiao, Zethor's deep voice rumbled, echoing across the chamber. We have reviewed your petition for full membership. Catherine inclined her head slightly. Thank you, High Executive. Humanity stands ready to. There is, Zethor interrupted, another matter we must address first. A chill rippled down Catherine's spine. This wasn't in the agenda. Zethor gestured, and holographic screens flared to life around the chamber. They showed images of mining ships, planetary surfaces, and human workers wearing exosuits. Your species has been extracting resources from the Kepler 442 system, he said, his tone turning hard. A system claimed by the Valoran expansion fleet 2 centuries ago. You are trespassing, stealing from the Empire. The chamber filled with whispers. Catherine felt her heart pound once hard before she spoke. That is not correct. Kepler 442 was unclaimed when human colony ships arrived 15 years ago. We have full legal documentation proving our right to settle there. Zethor's lips curled, revealing teeth like polished stone. You accuse me of lying. I'm presenting facts, Catherine said evenly, her voice steady. With your permission, I'll display the evidence. At her gesture, a ring of holographic data appeared, star charts, legal records, survey dates. The proof was undeniable. For a moment, even the murmurs in the chamber stopped. And then Zethor rose to his full height. You dare contradict me, he thundered, in front of the council. You think your kind, creatures who only recently crawled from their home world, have the right to correct your betters. Some delegates turned away. Others watched in silence, afraid. Catherine kept her voice calm. High Executive, humanity came to the stars seeking cooperation, not conflict. We have followed every law, if you examine these records. Enough, Zethor slammed a hand on the control panel of his throne. You will not lecture me about laws. You are primitives who mistake defiance for courage. 10 Valoran guards emerged from side doors, their armor glinting as they surrounded Catherine. A voice called from one of the council seats, Ambassador Trell, a small reptilian being from the Mandari species. "High Executive, this is a diplomatic chamber. She has protection under the Treaty of Silence." "I am the law in this chamber," Zethor roared. Catherine didn't move. She could feel the guards' hands gripping her arms, but she refused to struggle. Panic would only feed their arrogance. "High Executive," she said, her voice cutting through the hum of translators. "If you do this, you will disgrace everything this council stands for. Every species here has agreed that diplomats are protected, that words are stronger than violence. If you strike me down, you will shatter that principle forever." Zethor stepped closer, his blade forming from pure light. "The only principle that matters is strength," he said softly, "and your species has none." Catherine raised her chin. Cameras were recording from every angle, broadcasting live across thousands of worlds. She looked straight into them, her voice steady. "You have made a grave mistake," she said. "Humanity remembers." Zethor swung the blade. The light filled the chamber. When it faded, Catherine Jiao lay motionless on the platform. For a long moment there was only silence. Then the chamber erupted into chaos, shouts, gasps, diplomats fleeing their seats. The Valoran guards stepped back as Zethor calmly wiped his blade clean. "Let this be a lesson," he said coldly. "The Galaxy Empire has order. Those who disrupt that order will be removed." He turned to the stunned assembly. "Humanity's petition is denied. All human colonies will submit to Valoran oversight or be removed by force." Across the galaxy, billions watched the broadcast in disbelief. On Earth, in the United Earth Government building in Geneva, the council chamber had gone completely still. The only sound was the faint hum of the screen replaying Catherine's final words. President Wei Chen stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back. His reflection looked pale in the night glass. Behind him, aides and generals waited in silence. "Sir," his chief of staff said finally, "the Empire demands an apology. They expect us to accept sanctions and surrender Kepler 442. Chen didn't answer immediately. He was staring up at the stars, the same stars where Catherine Jiao had just died. "For 10,000 years, he said softly, humanity fought each other on Earth. We stopped because we thought we'd grown beyond it. We believed the stars would teach us peace." He turned, and his expression hardened into something cold and unrecognizable. "We were wrong." He looked at the generals. "Recall every citizen from Empire space, every diplomat, every trader, every tourist. Bring them home." A general hesitated, "And the Empire's demands." Chen's voice was like steel. "They want to see what humanity is capable of." He paused, his gaze cutting across the room. "Let's show them." Far above the planet, the orbital shipyards began to awaken. Factories that had built exploration vessels shut down and began to retool. Military command centers went dark to the outside world. Communications with the Galactic Empire ceased. For the first time in 50 years, Earth was silent. And somewhere deep beneath the lunar surface, in a bunker forgotten since the wars of old Earth, a signal flickered to life. A forgotten code only one man still understood. Admiral Marcus Reeves opened his eyes as the red light on his console turned green. The severing had begun. Earth goes dark. The galaxy has no idea what's coming next. For 21 days after the execution of Ambassador Catherine Jiao, Earth said nothing. To the rest of the galaxy, the silence was deafening. The hypernet feeds, once alive with chatter, trade offers, and diplomatic updates, went dark. The once busy human trade lanes emptied overnight. Civilian ships recalled their beacons and disappeared into jump corridors that never reopened. The few non-human vessels that tried to contact Earth received only a repeating message. Transmission restricted. United Earth Command under communication lockdown. At first, the Galactic Empire mocked it. Commentators on alien channels laughed that the primitives were sulking. Memes of crying humans circulated across hundreds of worlds. News anchors spoke of Earth's inevitable surrender. But after the second week, laughter began to fade. The humans weren't sulking, they were preparing. In orbit above the moon, the UESS Retribution came to life. The ship had slept for years under the cover of a research vessel. Its hull still bore the faded logo of the old United Earth Exploration Corps, but beneath the false plating was something entirely different, tungsten carbide armor layered over reactive shields, spinal-mounted railguns capable of firing slugs at near-light velocity, and launch tubes for 1,000 self-guided kinetic missiles. On its command bridge stood Fleet Admiral Marcus Reeves, the man chosen to lead Earth's War Council. He was tall, with gray at his temples and the quiet posture of someone who had survived too many wars already. A soldier from the old generation, he had fought during the unification conflicts before humanity discovered faster-than-light travel. He had seen cities burn and treaties crumble. That experience had shaped him into a man of calm ruthlessness, a soldier who believed in peace but understood the price of it. Now, standing before the holographic map of the galaxy, Reeves watched as blue dots, representing human colonies and embassies, slowly blinked out one by one. Not because they'd been destroyed, but because their people were coming home. "Status report," Reeves said quietly. Lieutenant Ashak Quinn, a young officer barely 30, handed him a data pad. "Last transport convoy from Vega Station entered Sol space an hour ago. No pursuit detected." "Good," Reeves said. "How many are back?" 97% of our citizens. The rest unaccounted for. Some were taken by the Valorians." Reeves's jaw tightened. "Then we get them back." He turned to the room. Around him stood scientists, engineers, and military commanders, the brightest minds Earth had to offer. At the far end of the table, Dr. Elise Tanaka, head of weapons development, stood with her arms crossed, eyes tired from sleepless nights. "Dr. Tanaka," Reeves said, "show us what we have." She nodded and tapped the console. The holographic map dissolved, replaced by schematics, sleek warships, drones, and energy systems pulsing with red and blue light. "This," she said, pointing to a rotating model, "is the Ares-class interceptor. Fastest manned ship ever built. Triple reactor core, magnetic rail system, autonomous AI swarm integration. Designed originally for asteroid mining, repurposed for combat." She switched to another projection, a cylinder of reinforced alloy the size of a shuttle. "Project Gile," she said. "Mass driver ordnance with precision targeting at relativistic speeds. Non-nuclear, no energy signature. It can hit a ship moving at FTL entry velocity." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Reeves exhaled slowly. "They killed a diplomat in front of the galaxy. We're not just fighting for our pride, we're fighting for the law itself." President Chen's voice came through the comm feed from Earth. "The Council has voted unanimously. Operation Gile is authorized." A low hum filled the room as the officers straightened. The war had officially begun. Across Earth, the transformation was absolute. Factories that once produced consumer goods now churned out armor plating, missile casings, and stealth drive components. Civilian engineers were recruited into military R&D AI cores, were awakened from deep storage, updated, and paired with human tacticians. In the deserts of Australia, subterranean hangars opened for the first time in decades, revealing fleets of dormant ships buried since the unification wars. On Mars, orbital rings became launch platforms. On Titan, refineries processed volatile elements for antimatter fuel. And on the dark side of the moon, old bunkers from forgotten wars flickered back to life. Humanity was no longer hiding, it was remembering. In a secured briefing chamber beneath Geneva, President Chen faced the Global Military Council via hologram. His tone was calm but filled with a quiet fury. "They think we're weak," Chen said. "They think because we haven't fought among the stars, we've forgotten how. They don't understand war is written in our DNA. Every tool they built to control us, every law they wrote to restrain us, came from the belief that humans would never stand alone." He paused, scanning the faces before him. Men and women from every nation, every background, united under one flag for the first time in history. "But we are alone now," he said, "and maybe that's exactly what we needed to remember who we are." He turned toward Admiral Reeves's projection. "Admiral, are your forces ready?" Reeves nodded. 50 warships operational, 3 carrier groups forming, orbital defense grids active. AI coordination network stable. We're operating under full blackout. The Empire can't detect us. Chen's voice lowered. "You understand what comes next." Reeves looked straight into the camera. "We strike first." Far across the stars, on Valoria Prime, High Executive Zethor lounged in his throne. Human broadcasts had ceased, and with them, any entertainment from their ridiculous news channels. He'd grown bored of waiting. "Cowards," he muttered, swirling a glass of iridescent liquid. "They hide in their home system, probably arguing about how to apologize." His military advisor, a cautious reptilian known as Commander Velrix, approached carefully. "High Executive, our intelligence reports increased activity in the human system. Industrial output is spiking. We suspect rearmament." Zethor laughed, a deep, metallic sound. "Let them play with their toys. 50 years in space doesn't make a species dangerous." Velrix hesitated, "But sir—" Zethor's tone sharpened. "Enough, prepare the fleet. If the humans refuse to submit, we'll remind them who rules this galaxy." On the Retribution, the countdown had begun. Reeves stood on the bridge as the shipyard lights dimmed around him. Rows of screens came alive, tactical feeds, sensor arrays, navigation systems. Outside, the darkness of space seemed to ripple as engines flared to life. "Strike Force Vengeance," Reeves said into the intercom, his voice carrying across 50 ships. "This is Admiral Reeves. Today we end our silence. Today we show them what happens when the galaxy forgets that Earth remembers." A murmur of quiet replies came back from every ship. Some pilots whispered prayers. Others simply checked their weapons one last time. Lieutenant Quinn's voice broke through the static. "All systems green, sir. Jump coordinates locked for the Valoria Prime system." Reeves nodded. "Execute the Gile protocol." The stars outside stretched into white lines as the human fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel. The Galactic Empire detected them 6 hours later. At first, Valoran Command assumed it was a stray convoy, perhaps a mining group that had taken a wrong jump corridor. But when the sensor readings came in clearly, the laughter stopped. 50 ships, human design, heading straight for Valoria Prime. The Valoran Military Council erupted into disbelief. 50 ships, that's suicide," one commander shouted. "They're sending a message, not an army." Zethor smiled. "Then let's send them a reply." Within hours, the largest defensive fleet in the galaxy was mobilized. 300 warships, every one armed with plasma arrays and energy lances capable of cutting moons in half. Across the Empire, the news spread. Every species turned its eyes toward the Valoran home system. The consensus was simple: humanity was finished. Inside the Retribution, Reeves stared at the tactical display showing the enemy formation closing in, a glowing mass of red dots converging like a storm. 300 ships, Lieutenant Quinn said softly. "They outnumber us 6-1. Reeves's voice was steady. "No, they outnumber us 300 to 50, but numbers don't win wars, preparation does." He looked to his comms officer. "Are the cyber warfare teams in position?" "Yes, sir." "And our AI network?" "Fully synced." Reeves straightened, his eyes calm. "Good, then let's remind them how humans fight." He leaned forward. "All ships break formation, alpha pattern, engage at maximum range." The human fleet scattered, breaking apart like a school of fish, unpredictable, chaotic, impossible to track. The Valoran commander laughed when he saw it. "They're disorganized, they have no discipline." Moments later, the first railgun salvo hit. Invisible projectiles traveling at near-light speed ripped through Valoran shields built for energy beams, not kinetic force. 3 warships exploded instantly, torn apart before they could return fire. On the Retribution, the crew watched in silent awe as the first victories appeared on their screens. Lieutenant Quinn whispered, "It's working." Reeves didn't smile. "It's just the beginning." From the observation deck of the Galactic Concordant Station, Ambassador Trell watched the unfolding battle through a live feed. His claws trembled. 50 ships, he whispered. "They sent only 50. And yet in the feed, 300 Valoran ships burned like dying stars. The Valoran fleet closes in, believing victory certain. But humanity's true war, the one fought with precision, intelligence, and vengeance, has only begun. Valoria Prime hung like a radiant jewel against the blackness of space, a world of towering crystal spires, oceans that shimmered violet under 3 suns, and cities that stretched across continents. For 6 centuries, the Valoran Empire had ruled from here, their flag a symbol of dominance none dared challenge. Until now, high above the planet, a storm of light and destruction unfolded, the first true war in living galactic memory. 300 Valoran warships formed a shimmering wall of energy around their homeworld. Each ship was vast, majestic, armed with weapons that had ended rebellions and crushed fleets. They moved in perfect formation, slow, deliberate, confident, like an ancient army reenacting a tradition. Opposite them, 50 human warships drifted silently in the dark. Smaller, faster, dull gray rather than gold. Their hulls bore no decoration, no pride, only function. To the Valoran commanders, it looked like a massacre waiting to happen. To the humans, it was geometry. On the UESS Retribution, Admiral Marcus Reeves stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display paint the void with shifting lines and color-coded chaos. Lieutenant Asha Quinn read out data from her console, her voice low but firm. Valoran fleet advancing in ceremonial pattern linear wall formation. Speed, 1/4 impulse. Shields at full capacity. They're keeping it theatrical. Reeves nodded. They always do. They fight to be seen, not to win. The human fleet moved in silence. No grand formation, no synchronized volley. They scattered across the system like seeds in a storm. Every captain had independent control, guided by an AI network that mapped thousands of possible trajectories per second. Lock targets, Reeves ordered. Prioritize command ships and communications relays. Targets locked, sir. Reeves exhaled slowly. Fire. The first railgun barrage hit before the Valorans realized the humans had even fired. No glowing plasma beams, no warning lights. Just silent death, tungsten slugs traveling at near-light speed, invisible until impact. One moment, the Valoran flagship Dominion's Pride was broadcasting formation orders. The next, its bridge disintegrated in a flash of molten metal. Then the chaos began. Energy shields, designed to absorb plasma and laser fire, did nothing against solid projectiles. Railgun slugs tore through hulls, ricocheting down corridors, exploding reactors. "Return fire," shouted the Valoran fleet commander, Admiral Krylik, as alarms filled his ship. Hundreds of plasma bolts lanced through space, lighting up the darkness in brilliant waves. But the human ships didn't meet them head-on. They danced. Using micro-thrusters and predictive algorithms, the smaller vessels spun, darted, and twisted, weaving through the plasma storm like silver ghosts. Every movement calculated, every dodge premeditated by the AIs linked to Reeves's flagship. On Valoria Prime, the broadcast played live across the Empire. Billions of citizens watched, expecting triumph. Within minutes, disbelief spread across their faces. "Where are our victories?" one news commentator whispered as he stared at the screen. Why are our ships exploding?" Reeves's voice cut through the comms. "They think this is a duel, it's an autopsy." Missile bays opened on all human ships. Swarms of self-guided projectiles poured into space. Thousands of small, black cylinders that spread out like a cloud. Each missile contained an onboard AI. They shared data in real time, adjusting trajectories mid-flight. Valoran point defense lasers opened fire, cutting through the swarm. But for every missile destroyed, 3 more adapted, splitting apart, changing vector. Seconds later, hundreds of Valoran ships vanished in a synchronized chain of detonations. The shockwaves tore through their own formations. "Sir," Quinn called out, "enemy communications in disarray. They're issuing conflicting orders." Reeves didn't smile. "Keep pressure, cut their retreat routes." He turned toward the communications officer. "Deploy Spectre protocols. I want their sensors blind in 30 seconds. "Yes, Admiral." Deep inside the Retribution, cyber warfare teams worked in silence. Screens flickered with alien code, glyphs streaming past faster than human eyes could follow. "Injecting false telemetry into Valoran command feeds," one officer muttered. "Redirecting navigation data now." Within moments, Valoran ships began firing on their own. Their targeting systems believed allies were enemies. In the confusion, one of their cruisers rammed a flagship, breaking its spine clean in half. On Valoria Prime, command centers screamed in disbelief. "Our fleet's fighting itself." Admiral Krylik gripped the edge of his command throne. "Who is doing this?" His second officer's voice trembled. "The humans, sir. They're inside our systems, there." The transmission cut off as another rail slug pierced their hull. From orbit, the battle looked like a storm made of glass. Blue explosions reflected off Valoria's upper atmosphere, lighting the night side of the planet like artificial dawn. "Sir," Quinn said softly, "they're trying to retreat." Reeves's eyes stayed fixed on the map. "No one leaves." He issued one last command. "Lock their FTL drives, disable, not destroy." The Retribution's AI responded instantly. Within seconds, cyber pulses shot through the network, overriding FTL cores across the enemy fleet. Ships that tried to jump found their drives frozen. The Valoran fleet was trapped. 4 hours later, it was over. 300 Valoran ships gone. Every one of them destroyed, crippled, or captured. The humans had lost 6 ships, none destroyed. Reeves stood in silence as the debris floated across the viewport. The light of burning hulls reflected off his face, painting it gold and red. No cheers filled the bridge, no celebration. Just quiet breathing, the kind that followed the unthinkable. Lieutenant Quinn whispered, "We did it." Reeves finally spoke. "No, we've only answered the first question." She frowned. "What question, sir?" Reeves turned to her. His eyes were dark. "What happens when you kill a human diplomat on live broadcast?" He walked to the communication console and nodded to his officer. "Open a channel, broadcast across all frequencies, all of them." Seconds later, his image appeared on every screen in the galaxy, from the spires of the Galactic Concordant to the markets of distant colonies. Billions of beings turned their eyes toward a single human standing on a quiet bridge surrounded by starlight and wreckage. Reeves's voice was calm, clear, and cold. "I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Reeves of the United Earth Space Forces. 1 month ago, the Valoran Empire executed Ambassador Catherine Jiao, a protected diplomat, in violation of every galactic law and treaty that defines civilization. They called us primitives, weak, unworthy." He paused. Behind him, the camera panned across the shattered remains of the Valoran fleet. "These ships are your reminder. You took one of ours." He leaned closer to the camera. "We've come for payment." Silence stretched across the galaxy. "This is just the interest." The transmission ended. Across the Empire, panic erupted. Worlds that had sworn loyalty to Valoria questioned their allegiance. Smaller species that had lived under Valoran rule for centuries began stockpiling weapons. Some declared neutrality. Others sent quiet messages to Earth, pledging support. The Galactic Order was cracking. On Valoria Prime, High Executive Zethor sat in stunned silence, his claws digging into the armrest of his throne. The feed replayed in the background, human warships floating untouched while his mighty fleet burned. He stared at the image of Reeves's face, calm, composed, utterly unshaken. "Impossible," he whispered. They're just humans." "Sir," a trembling officer said from below, "they've destroyed the home fleet." Zethor's voice dropped to a growl. "Then build another." The officer swallowed. We don't have enough ships or crews." Zethor rose slowly from his throne, his skin shifting colors in anger. "Then find them. I don't care what it takes. I want their worlds broken. I want their sky burning." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. For the first time in 6 centuries, the Valoran Empire was afraid. Back on the Retribution, Reeves stood alone in his quarters, staring at the stars through the viewport. In the reflection, his face looked older, harder than it had hours ago. He touched the insignia on his uniform, the one bearing Earth's crest. "We didn't start this," he whispered, "but we'll finish it." On his console, a quiet ping announced a new message, a direct transmission from President Chen. "Admiral," the message read, "the world has seen what we can do. Now we decide what we must do." Reeves closed the message and looked back out at the void, toward the other stars of the Valoran Empire, where more fleets waited. He whispered to himself, "We've woken the giant. Now we'll see who dares stand in its path." The Valoran home fleet lies in ruins. The galaxy watches in horror. Humanity has spoken, but the Empire is preparing for war on a scale no one has seen before. 3 days after the destruction of the Valoran home fleet, the galaxy changed. Where once there had been order, even tyranny, now there was fear. Every news network replayed the same footage. 300 Valoran warships drifting in ruin, their wreckage orbiting Valoria Prime like a silent graveyard. Commentators spoke in disbelief. Political leaders scrambled for explanations. The proud empire that had ruled for 6 centuries had lost everything in a single afternoon to a species most of them still called children of a death world. And while the galaxy gossiped, humanity moved. The storm unfolds. In less than 72 hours, human ships appeared in 17 Valoran-controlled systems simultaneously. There were no warnings, no ultimatums, only precision. The UESS Retribution led the main offensive in the core sectors. Admiral Marcus Reeves commanded not just a fleet, but an idea. Each human strike group acted like a living organism, independent, fast, and ruthless. They bypassed the front lines, cutting deep into enemy logistics. Fuel depots vanished. Command hubs went dark. Planetary garrisons found their skis filled with streaks of fire before they even received distress signals. Humanity didn't fight for conquest. They fought for message and memory. When a Valoran military base fell, hospitals were left untouched. When orbital defenses collapsed, civilian transports were given safe evacuation corridors. Human medics landed minutes after the fighting stopped, delivering food and medical aid. Where the Valorans had ruled by terror, humans fought with terrifying precision and a conscience. On the bridge of the Retribution, Lieutenant Ashak Quinn watched another red icon vanish from the map. Valoria Roman 9 defense station neutralized. No civilian casualties reported. Admiral Reeves nodded slowly. Proceed to target Group Theta, disable, not destroy. Quinn hesitated. Sir, the Valoran military has used slave labor on that station. Our intel says there are hundreds of workers still aboard. Reeves's gaze hardened. Then we free them, send the Marines in non-lethal. He paused, looking around the bridge at the officers who had been fighting beside him since the first strike. We are not here to destroy their people, only their power. The crew straightened. No one questioned him again. The rebellion begins. On the outer edge of Valoran space, a new voice rose among the stars. Ambassador Trell of the Mandari, the same reptilian diplomat who had tried to stop Zethor during Catherine Jiao's execution, transmitted an open declaration. The Valoran Empire's age of dominance is over. The Mandari people will no longer serve tyrants who murder diplomats and enslave worlds. We stand with Earth. That message spread like wildfire. Species that had been quiet for centuries suddenly found courage. The Carol Unity, long oppressed for their resources, stopped paying tribute. The Aesni clans, once forced to provide mercenaries for Valoran campaigns, defected overnight and began raiding Imperial outposts, not for conquest but revenge. Even the Trellan, a species of telepaths, began leaking intelligence to the humans. The Empire had ruled through fear, but now fear had changed sides. In one of the forward command rooms, Reeves watched reports flood in worlds rebelling, ships surrendering, garrisons laying down arms. Lieutenant Quinn leaned closer. Sir, they're calling us liberators. Reeves frowned. We're not liberators, we're a mirror. They're seeing what they've built and what they made of us. The Valoran response. High Executive Zethor refused to believe what he was seeing. From his palace on a fortified moon, he watched the reports stream in. Impossible, he muttered, packing before the command table. We are the center of civilization. The humans can't destroy us this quickly. Commander Velrix, his reptilian advisor, kept his voice low. Sir, their attacks are surgical. They're not conquering, they're erasing our military capability, one system at a time. Zethor slammed his clawed fist against the table. Then use everything. Deploy chemical weapons, planetary bombardments, whatever it takes. I will not let our empire fall to vermin from a death world. Velrix hesitated. Sir, deploying those weapons would violate the galactic treaties. Even our allies would. Do it, Zethor roared. If we burn the galaxy to stop them, then so be it. Velrix bowed slightly. As you command. And with those words, the Valoran Empire crossed the line from arrogance into madness. The Dark Turn. 3 days later, human outposts on the colony world Ardent Reach went silent. The Retribution's communications officer broke the news on the bridge. Sir, satellite feed from Ardent Reach just came in. It's bad. The screen flickered to life, showing a red haze spreading across the colony's atmosphere. Bodies lined the streets, soldiers and civilians alike. Chemical burns. Reeves felt his throat tighten. Bioweapons. Yes, sir. Traces match Valoran's signature tech, forbidden class. The bridge went silent. Every officer knew what that meant. The Empire had just violated every rule of war written in the stars. Sir, Quinn whispered, what are your orders? Reeves's voice was flat. Pull survivors, evacuate who you can, then mark the launch site. She nodded for bombing. No, Reeves said quietly, for erasure. Within hours, human reconnaissance identified the 3 bases responsible for the attacks. The response was immediate. From orbit, the Retribution launched kinetic strikes. Solid metal rods dropped from orbit at near-light speed. They fell silently without light or sound, and then the world shook. The impact sites glowed white-hot, leaving nothing but scorched craters miles wide. Reeves stood at the viewport as the flashes faded. No more warnings, he said softly. If they use forbidden weapons again, we end every facility that holds them. Lieutenant Quinn's voice trembled. Sir, do we announce it? Reeves nodded. The galaxy needs to know who crossed the line first. Humanity speaks. The next day, Reeves appeared once again on every channel in the galaxy. Behind him, the human flag floated against the stars, calm, defiant. This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Reeves of the United Earth Space Forces. The Valoran leadership has chosen to deploy biological and chemical weapons against our colonies, in violation of the treaties they claim to uphold. Thousands of civilians are dead. In response, we will strike every facility responsible. We will not target civilians. We will not destroy worlds. But if you use forbidden weapons, you forfeit any right to mercy. His voice remained calm, but there was a quiet fury beneath it, the kind that made even distant species flinch. We did not start this war, but we will end it, not through domination, through justice. Billions listened in silence. For the first time in galactic history, a message of war carried the weight of law. The weight of mercy. Later, in the ship's observation deck, Lieutenant Quinn found Reeves standing alone, looking out at the debris of another fallen Valoran station. Sir, she said quietly, some of the crew are questioning why we keep sending medical teams to their civilians, after what they did at Ardent Reach. Reeves didn't turn, because if we stop caring about the innocent, then we become them. She hesitated. They'd show us no mercy. Reeves finally looked at her, his eyes bloodshot but clear. Then that's how we win, Lieutenant, by being better. Mercy isn't weakness, it's the proof we still deserve victory. Ripples across the galaxy. The galaxy trembled. Every week brought new collapses in Valoran control. More systems switched allegiance, some to humanity, others to independence. Species that had been silent for centuries began rewriting their laws, preparing for a world where the Valorans no longer ruled. The old hierarchy, the very structure of the Empire, was disintegrating. On the Galactic Concordant Station, emergency sessions were held daily. Ambassadors shouted over each other, trying to restore order, but their fear was visible. The humans had become unstoppable, not just militarily but morally. They fought with restraint, precision, and terrifying clarity. Ambassador Trell addressed the council one day, his reptilian voice trembling with emotion. For 6 centuries, the Valorans ruled through fear. We stayed silent when they conquered our worlds. We said nothing when they enslaved others. We looked away when they murdered a diplomat in this very chamber. He paused, staring into the silence. Now humanity reminds us what justice looks like, and it terrifies us because we forgot. Zethor's breaking point. In his fortified command fortress, Zethor watched system after system fall. His reflection on the window looked older, almost alien. He slammed his claws against the glass. They'll never stop, he growled. Even if they win, they'll never stop. Commander Velrix approached cautiously. Sir, perhaps we should consider surrender terms or negotiation. Zethor's blade ignited instantly. Negotiate with savages, never. Velrix froze as the glowing weapon hovered inches from his throat. Zethor's voice lowered to a whisper. They want justice, I'll give them extinction. The Siege of Valoria 7. 2 weeks later, humanity reached the Valoran military fortress station Valoria 7, the largest supply depot in the Empire. It orbited a massive gas giant, protected by 200 warships. The Valorans prepared for a glorious final stand. But the humans didn't attack. Instead, they surrounded the station, cut off communications, and deployed thousands of stealth drones. The drones hacked power grids, shut down life support in military sectors, and jammed all outgoing signals. Then humanity waited. Days passed, supplies ran low, panic spread. 3 weeks later, the Valoran commander surrendered. Not a single shot fired, no deaths. When the doors opened, human Marines entered silently, offering food, water, and medkits. The Valoran soldiers looked at them in disbelief. The galaxy watched in awe. Humanity could have destroyed everything, yet they chose not to. As reports spread, one phrase began to echo across the stars. The humans fight like demons, but they save like saints. Humanity's campaign spreads across the stars. The Valoran Empire is crumbling, but Zethor still lives, and his final act of defiance will ignite the darkest chapter of the war. The Galactic Concordant Station drifted in silent orbit above a blue-white dwarf star, its surface dimmed and scarred from decades of neglect and fear. Once it had been the proud heart of diplomacy, now it was the stage for humanity's reckoning. For 6 months, the Valoran Empire had been in freefall. Its fleets shattered, its colonies surrendered, its rulers hunted. And yet one name still haunted the stars. High Executive Zethor, the architect of Ambassador Catherine Jiao's execution, the man who had sparked the first galactic war in centuries. Now humanity had him. The capture, the operation that brought Zethor down, was swift and surgical. The Valoran leader had fled into the Orax Nebula, hiding in a fortress built inside a drifting asteroid. He was guarded by elite soldiers, loyalists still clinging to their dying empire. But humanity no longer fought wars with brute force. They fought with precision, intelligence, and inevitability. Admiral Marcus Reeves deployed Recon Team Sigma, a unit of powered-armored Marines guided by AI-assisted infiltration systems. Their orders were simple: capture, not kill. At dawn cycle, the human dropships descended in total silence. EMP bursts neutralized the fortress defenses. Valoran sentries collapsed as neural inhibitors froze their exosuits mid-motion. Within 20 minutes, the corridors of the fortress were under human control. Zethor sat on his throne as the doors blew open. The light from the corridor cast a harsh beam across his scaled face. "You came to kill me?" he asked, voice bitter, defiant. The lead Marine, Captain Naomi Griggs, stepped forward, her visor reflecting his image. "No," she said, "we came for something better." She threw him a set of restraints glowing with blue containment light. "Justice." The announcement. 3 days later, President Wei Chen stood before the cameras on Earth. Behind him, the United Earth emblem shimmered, no longer the old blue planet, but a stylized globe surrounded by a ring of stars, representing every species that now sought alliance. The galaxy waited. "We have captured High Executive Zethor of the Valoran Empire," Chen began, his voice calm but unyielding. "For centuries, the Valorans ruled through fear and violence. They executed diplomats, enslaved species, and silenced entire worlds. We could end them as they ended others, but we won't. Humanity will not repeat their sins." He looked straight into the lens. "Instead, we will put Zethor and his council on trial, a public trial, before every world in the galaxy." Gasps echoed across the networks. "A trial, not execution." "We will show the galaxy what justice truly means," Chen said. "Because our fight was never about conquest. It was about law, dignity, and the right of all sapient life to live free from tyranny." Within hours, the announcement reshaped history. For the first time, justice became a weapon more powerful than fear. The preparation. The Galactic Concordant Station, once the site of Catherine Jiao's death, became humanity's courtroom. Under Admiral Reeves's supervision, human Marines secured every corridor. Engineers rebuilt the council chamber, transforming it into a court unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Rows of translators and holographic screens lined the walls. Judges' benches were built from polished steel and transparent alloy. The center dais, where Jiao had once stood, was now encased in light, surrounded by a containment field designed to hold any species safely. At its heart sat Zethor, chained but unbroken, his shimmering armor removed, leaving only the scars of age and pride. 17 of his senior officials were seated beside him, each accused of war crimes, genocide, and violations of galactic law. Across from them, a panel of human judges led by Justice Maria Martinez, the chief of Earth's Supreme Tribunal, presided. Representatives from 80 species filled the chamber. Many came not to see punishment, but to witness something the galaxy had never imagined possible: fairness. The trial begins. Justice Martinez's voice carried through every speaker in the chamber. This court convenes under the authority of the United Earth Federation and the Galactic Accord. The defendants are charged with crimes against sapient life, violations of diplomatic immunity, and the unlawful execution of Ambassador Catherine Jiao. Zethor lifted his head. "Your laws mean nothing to me," he growled. "You have no authority over the Valoran Empire." Martinez met his gaze without fear. There is no Valoran Empire anymore. The chamber fell silent. There is only what you did and the truth that follows. The evidence. The prosecution began. Holograms filled the chamber, footage from the day of the execution, broadcast across the galaxy. Catherine Jiao's calm voice echoed once more. "You have made a grave mistake. Humanity remembers." The crowd watched, transfixed, as Zethor's blade struck her down. The moment that had changed everything replayed in perfect clarity. Several alien ambassadors looked away, unable to bear it. Others, the ones who had once cheered valor and dominance, now sat in stunned shame. Then came the testimonies. Ambassador Trell of the Mandari spoke first, his reptilian eyes wet with emotion. "I was there, I heard her speak truth, and I saw Zethor silence her with blood. She violated no law, he did, and we all did by saying nothing." More witnesses followed. Valoran officers confessed under oath, revealing orders to enslave human colonists, to bombard resistant worlds, to unleash chemical agents. Zethor watched with a sneer. "Weaklings," he muttered, "they fear death more than dishonor." But the silence that followed told him the galaxy no longer feared him. The defense. When the defense was allowed to speak, Zethor stood, towering over his restraints. "You call this justice," he said, "but it is vengeance wearing new clothes. The strong have always ruled the weak. That is the law of nature. Your species only won because you are ruthless. You pretend to be moral, but your morality is a luxury of victory." He leaned forward, his voice deepening. "Do not fool yourselves. You are no better than us." Justice Martinez listened without interruption. When he finished, she replied quietly, "Perhaps, but we remember our mistakes. You do not." The verdict. The trial lasted 40 days. When the final testimony ended, the chamber filled with tension. Billions watched across the galaxy. Justice Martinez stood, holding the verdict tablet. Her voice was steady, resolute. "After reviewing all evidence and testimony, this court finds High Executive Zethor guilty on all counts, including the murder of a protected diplomat, conspiracy to commit genocide, and crimes against sapient life." Zethor showed no emotion. He only closed his eyes. 17 co-defendants are found guilty of related charges. Sentence: death. A gasp spread through the chamber, but Martinez raised her hand. "However, humanity recognizes that we were not the only victims. The Valoran Empire oppressed dozens of species for centuries. Many suffered far worse than we did. Therefore, Earth will not carry out this sentence." A ripple of confusion swept through the crowd. Martinez turned to the observers. "We return these prisoners to those they enslaved. The victims of Valoran rule will decide their fate." The delegation of 12 liberated species rose in unison. The Mandari, the Aesni, the Carol Unity. Their faces were grim, but their eyes burned with something deeper: closure. Zethor finally looked afraid. Aftermath. That evening, as the prisoners were escorted away, Admiral Reeves stood in the chamber beside President Chen. "They expected us to kill him," Reeves said. Chen nodded. "We could have, and maybe it would have been easier, but this way," he glanced around at the silent ambassadors. "This way, the galaxy learns." Reeves's eyes lingered on the dais where Catherine Jiao had died. She would have liked that. Chen smiled faintly. She would have said, "Words matter more than weapons." Reeves sighed, "And yet it took both to get us here." The transfer. The following day, under the watch of Federation peacekeepers, Z-Thor was handed over to the Mandari Tribunal, a council representing the oppressed species of the former empire. Reporters tried to capture his final words as he was led away. He said nothing. For the first time, silence was his only power. The birth of a federation. 1 week later, President Chen addressed the First Galactic Reconstruction Council. From the ashes of tyranny rises law, from fear comes unity, and from one woman's death came the rebirth of justice across the stars. He raised his hand toward the assembled delegates. Let this be the foundation of a new order, not an empire, but a federation. No single species shall rule another. Every world will have a voice. Every diplomat shall be sacred. The chamber erupted in applause. Even former enemies joined in. And somewhere deep in the stars, humanity exhaled not as conquerors, but as the keepers of a fragile, hard-earned peace. Admiral Reeves. That night aboard the Retribution, Reeves stood at the observation deck once more, staring at the stars. Lieutenant Quinn approached quietly. "It's over, sir." Reeves shook his head. "No, it's beginning." She frowned. "Beginning." He gestured to the stars beyond. "The galaxy will need someone to protect what we built today. Justice isn't permanent. It's something you have to defend every single day." He looked toward the distant light of Earth. "Catherine Jiao taught us that. The war is over. The Valoran Empire is gone. But a fragile new peace stands on the shoulders of humanity, and even as justice prevails, new powers stir in the dark, waiting to test it." 10 years had passed since the war. The stars were quieter now. Trade routes once patrolled by Valoran war fleets were filled with merchant convoys and exploration vessels. Former battlefields had become reconstruction hubs, and where once the galaxy had lived under the shadow of a single empire, now it operated under a fragile new peace, the Galactic Federation. It was not perfect. It was not even stable. But it was real. And in the heart of it all stood humanity, the species that had once been dismissed as primitives, now the moral backbone of an interstellar community learning how to start again. The Federation capital. The Galactic Concordant Station, once a place of fear and arrogance, now shone with renewed purpose. Its corridors buzzed with diplomats, traders, scientists, and mediators from hundreds of worlds. The old council chamber, the same place where Catherine Jiao had fallen, was now a court of law and a symbol of unity. A memorial stood at its center, a crystal statue of Catherine, hands clasped, eyes cast toward the stars. Beneath it, an inscription read in every known galactic language. "Let this place remind all species, harm an ambassador and you harm peace itself." Visitors often paused before it. Some bowed, others simply stood in silence, but all understood. Among those who stopped every morning was Ambassador Sarah Jiao, Catherine's daughter. Ambassador Sarah Jiao. Sarah was 28, tall and poised, with her mother's eyes and her father's quiet discipline. Where Catherine had been diplomatic steel, Sarah was a blade hidden in silk, polite, composed, but utterly unflinching. She had been 5 years old when her mother was executed. She had watched the footage 1,000 times, each viewing sharpening her resolve instead of breaking it. Now she walked the same halls her mother once had, carrying humanity's new mission, to preserve the peace her people had bled to earn. As she moved through the bustling corridors, alien ambassadors greeted her with warmth. "Ambassador Jiao," said one slender being from the Parvian collective, bowing slightly. "Always an honor." "The honor's mine," Sarah replied, smiling. Her voice carried the calm assurance of someone who had inherited not just her mother's position, but her purpose. Today was historic. A new species, the Craw Dominion, was joining the Federation. Their arrival had caused ripples of anxiety across the diplomatic community. The Craw were a militaristic race, massive, proud, bred for conquest. But war had broken them, and now they sought peace, or so their representatives claimed. Sarah was part of the Earth delegation assigned to welcome them. The ceremony. The Great Council chamber was packed. Hundreds of ambassadors filled the seats arranged in spiraling tiers. Holographic banners of member species hovered above them, spinning gently in the air. At the center stood the Craw delegation, towering figures covered in black and bronze armor. Their leader, General Kraith, was a giant even by Craw standards, his forearms crossed, his expression unreadable. President Wei Chen, older now but still sharp-eyed, addressed the assembly via hologram from Earth. The Craw Dominion has petitioned for Federation membership, Chen said. They have pledged to abide by our laws, uphold our treaties, and respect all diplomatic immunities. Today, they join not as conquerors, but as equals. Applause filled the chamber, though it was hesitant, polite rather than enthusiastic. The Craw were known for their brutality. Their acceptance was a gamble. General Kraith stepped forward to give his response. His voice was deep and commanding, echoing through the chamber without need of amplification. The Craw thanked the Federation for this opportunity, he said. We have learned from our past mistakes. Strength without restraint breeds ruin. We wish to build anew. His words were correct. His tone was not. There was no humility, only the carefully measured arrogance of a warrior forced to play diplomat. When he finished, applause followed again, thinner this time. The reception. The ceremony ended with a diplomatic gathering in the Hall of Concord. Food from hundreds of worlds filled long glass tables. Music from alien instruments hummed through the air. Sarah stood near the edge of the crowd, watching quietly as Kraith spoke with other ambassadors. His posture was relaxed, but his words, and the way smaller species flinched at his laughter, told her enough. He was testing boundaries. Ambassador Jiao, said a voice behind her. It was Ambassador Trell, older now, his scales dulled but his eyes still bright. It's strange, isn't it, seeing this hall filled with laughter after all those years? Sarah smiled faintly. My mother used to say peace always starts with small talk. Trell nodded, and ends with understanding or blood. Their conversation was interrupted by raised voices. General Kraith stood at the center of a small circle of diplomats. His booming laughter carried across the room. You speak of harmony, Kraith was saying to a group of small Parvian delegates. But harmony is what the weak hide behind when they fear strength. The Parvians, tiny, 4-foot-tall beings of glassy blue skin, looked uncomfortable. One stammered, strength can be shown through compassion, General. Kraith smirked. Compassion is what pray call mercy before they die. The surrounding crowd fell silent. Sarah's hands clenched at her sides. The confrontation. She stepped forward, her heels echoing against the polished floor. General Kraith. The room went still as she approached him. Even the air seemed to thin. Kraith turned, his heavy armor creaking. Ah, he said, eyes narrowing. The human ambassador, the daughter of her. Sarah met his gaze calmly. You seem to enjoy lecturing others about strength. I thought the Federation was here to promote peace. Peace, Kraith said, his lip curling, is simply what the strong allow the weak to enjoy. Sarah stopped a meter from him. Then you misunderstand the Federation entirely. He chuckled, do I? She looked around at the silent crowd, representatives from 100 species watching in dread. Then she looked back at him. Her voice was calm, but it carried across the hall. 10 years ago, another leader said those same words. He believed that strength was the right to dominate, that the weak existed only to serve. Do you know his name, General? Kraith frowned slightly. Z-Thor, he muttered. Yes, Sarah said. Z-Thor, the ruler of the Valoran Empire. He murdered my mother in this very station because she told the truth. He thought that made him powerful. Do you know what happened next? Kraith didn't answer. Sarah's tone sharpened. His empire burned, his fleets shattered. The galaxy watched his armies crumble under the fire of the weak. And when it was over, he stood on trial, alive but powerless. Because humanity does not measure strength in domination. We measure it in restraint. She took a slow step closer. Do you understand now, General? The Federation exists because we learned that violence without conscience isn't strength, it's fear wearing armor. Kraith's jaw clenched. His arrogance flickered into uncertainty. You threaten me? He asked quietly. Sarah shook her head. No, I'm warning you. Her eyes, the same steel gray as her mother's, met his. If you ever harm a diplomat, if you ever raise a weapon against peace, ask the Valorans what happens next. A hush swept through the chamber. After a long silence, Kraith bowed his head slightly. I spoke without understanding. The Craw will honor the Federation's laws. Sarah nodded. Then welcome to the Federation, General. Let's hope your people's strength will build, not destroy. Ripples of respect. When she turned away, the crowd slowly began to breathe again. Ambassador Trell joined her by the memorial window, his voice low. "You have your mother's fire." Sarah smiled faintly. "I have her memory, and I carry her unfinished work." He tilted his head. "And what work is that?" Sarah looked toward the stars. "To remind the galaxy that peace isn't a gift, it's a choice, and it must be chosen again every day." The night visit. Later that evening, Sarah returned to the memorial hall. The station was quiet now, the lights dimmed to twilight hues. She walked alone down the long glass corridor, her reflection faint beside the stars outside. The crystal statue of her mother stood waiting, calm, eternal. Sarah placed her hand on the base, tracing the engraved words. "Humanity remembers." She whispered, "You were right, Mom. Words are stronger than weapons." Then with a sad smile, "But sometimes you need both to make them listen." The station's artificial night deepened. Outside, Earth's patrol ships glided by in slow, silent arcs, not as conquerors but as guardians. The lesson of strength. That night, a Federation news feed replayed the moment between Sarah Jiao and General Kraith across every major world. The headline read, "Human Ambassador reminds the galaxy why the Federation exists." And in 1,000 worlds, beings who had never seen war felt something new, a strange, humbling respect for humanity. Because the species that had once been mocked as primitive had done what none before them dared. They had taught the galaxy that compassion was strength. The galaxy stands at peace, but shadows still linger. Some species whisper that the Federation's power has grown too strong. And far beyond known space, a new signal is detected, something watching humanity with interest. The stars burned quietly in the void, scattered like cold embers across the endless black. For the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy knew peace. But peace, as every human knew, was not the same as safety. And in the heart of the Galactic Federation, the lessons of the severing, the war that had torn civilization apart, were still being written. The Federation today. The Galactic Federation capital, orbiting the serene world of Haven Prime, had grown into a monument to what cooperation could achieve. Its towering structures were built from alloys and crystal, shimmering like frozen light. Gardens filled the interior domes, oxygen forests grown from a dozen worlds. Everywhere, symbols of unity shone. The interlinked sigil of the Federation, the banners of member species, and the phrase engraved above every entrance in 100 tongues. Justice is not conquered, it is kept. Earth's presence was unmistakable. Human technology powered the defense grids, human engineers led reconstruction efforts, and human diplomats oversaw the laws that bound the fragile peace together. Yet behind every victory lay a quiet understanding. Peace endured only because of memory, because humanity remembered. The Memorial Hall. Ambassador Sarah Jiao walked through the Hall of Memory, her footsteps echoing softly on the polished stone. Around her stood crystal statues of those who had fallen during the severing, humans and aliens alike. At the center was her mother's monument. Catherine Jiao's likeness stood facing the stars, her expression serene and unyielding. A single line of light pulsed through the statue's heart, syncing faintly with the rhythm of the station's life support systems, as if the monument itself still breathed with the station. Sarah paused before it, placing her hand on the smooth surface. 10 years since the trial. 10 years since humanity had turned justice into an act of mercy rather than revenge. The galaxy still struggled to understand that choice. Behind her, the soft hum of approaching footsteps broke her thoughts. "Still speaking to the stars?" asked a familiar voice. Sarah smiled slightly before turning. "Admiral Reeves, I thought you retired." Reeves looked older, his hair now silver, his shoulders a little heavier, but the quiet strength in his eyes remained. "I tried," he said with a small chuckle. "The galaxy doesn't like letting me rest." Rumors in the dark. They walked together toward the observation deck, the stars spreading before them in vast silence. Reeves's voice lowered. "There's something you should see." He handed her a small data tablet. The holographic display flickered to life, showing long-range telemetry scans from the Perseus frontier, the unexplored edge of Federation space. A faint energy pulse repeated at regular intervals, non-random, structured. Sarah frowned, a distress beacon. "Not one of ours," Reeves said. It's outside charted space, 30 light-years beyond the frontier. The signal doesn't match any known pattern. It's old. How old? Reeves hesitated. Older than the Federation, older than the Empire, possibly pre-Valoran civilization. Sarah's brow furrowed. You think it's a remnant? I think, Reeves said slowly, that someone or something is watching us. Shadows of the past. The Federation Council had been hearing similar reports for months. Small disappearances near the edges of space, sensors detecting impossible energy readings, brief ghost signals that vanished as soon as ships approached. Most dismissed them as anomalies. After all, rebuilding the galaxy left little time for ghosts. But humanity, forged in paranoia and experience, never ignored patterns. Sarah studied the signal data again. It pulsed like a heartbeat, 3 short bursts, then 1 long, over and over. Reeves noticed her expression. Recognize it. She nodded slowly. It's a pattern my mother used in old diplomatic transmissions. It means, we are not alone. The words hung in the air like gravity. The Council of the Federation. 2 days later, the Galactic Council assembled. The chamber shimmered with light from thousands of hollow screens displaying the mysterious signal. President Wei Chen, now in his 70s, his voice tempered by time and wisdom, presided from Earth via projection. The Federation has detected a repeating transmission beyond our borders, he announced. Origin unknown, but its structure implies intelligence and intent. Murmurs spread through the ambassadors. The Mandari delegation looked uneasy. The Craw remained still, their massive forms silent but alert. Sarah stood to speak. Her voice was calm but carried an echo of her mother's command. If someone is watching, we need to know who they are. And if they're reaching out, we need to decide what kind of galaxy will answer them. General Kraith, the same Craw who had once insulted the Federation's ideals, rose to his feet. Age had softened his arrogance but not his presence. Ambassador Jiao, he said, you propose diplomacy with an unknown force. You of all people know what happens when we trust too easily. Sarah met his gaze without flinching. And you, General, know what happens when we don't. The Valoran Empire taught us that fear is the first step toward tyranny. The chamber fell silent. President Chen leaned forward. She's right, fear built the last empire. We cannot let it build the next. He looked directly at Sarah's holographic projection. Ambassador Jiao, you'll lead the expedition. The journey. The UESS Horizon departed 1 week later, carrying a crew of humans and aliens from 6 Federation worlds. It was a symbol of unity, its hull marked with both human design and alien engineering. From the observation deck, Sarah watched the stars streak by as the ship entered faster-than-light travel. Beside her, a Mandari linguist named Varek adjusted his translator implant. Do you really think this is another civilization? He asked. Sarah's eyes remained on the stars. If it is, I hope they've learned from ours. The crew worked in silence as they neared the coordinates. The repeating signal grew stronger, its rhythm now almost like breathing. When the ship dropped out of FTL, the crew gasped. Before them hung a structure, vast, ancient, and silent. It was not a ship nor a planet, but something between the two. Metallic roots extended from a central sphere miles wide, stretching like veins through the dark. Scan it, Sarah ordered. Structures partially organic, Varek said. Power signatures still active, faint but stable. Reeves's old voice echoed over the comm from Federation Command. Stay sharp, Horizon, whatever's in there, don't assume it's friendly. Sarah smiled faintly. Admiral, after the last 10 years, I assume nothing is friendly. The Discovery. As the Horizon approached, a small section of the alien structure lit up, glowing pale blue. A beam extended toward them, not as a weapon, but as an invitation. Sarah hesitated. Can we analyze it? Varek checked his instruments. It's a communication field, it's matching our frequency. Sarah's heart began to race. Patch it through. The bridge filled with static. Then slowly words began to form, a synthetic voice, ancient and patient. To the descendants of Earth, we watched, we waited, we remember your war. Gasps filled the bridge. Sarah's breath caught. They know us. The voice continued. You have severed the old order. The galaxy stands free but fragile. The cycle must not repeat. Your kind carries both the seed of unity and destruction. Sarah whispered, "Who are you?" There was a long pause, then the voice replied, "We are the architects of the First Empire, the ones who left so that others could rise. We have returned to see what you have made of our ashes." The legacy of the severing. The signal ended abruptly. The alien structure went dark, drifting once again into silence. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Varek swallowed hard. They knew about the Valoran Empire. Maybe they created it. Sarah turned back toward the viewport, staring at the massive sphere. Or maybe they created all of us. She felt the chill of realization crawl up her spine. Humanity had not ended the story of the galaxy. They had only closed one chapter. Return to the station. Weeks later, the Horizon returned to Federation space. The Council convened in emergency session. Sarah's report was simple, but its impact was seismic. President Chen listened in silence. When she finished, he said quietly, "We thought the severing ended an era. Perhaps it only began one." Sarah nodded. "Whoever they are, they're watching, waiting, maybe testing whether we can hold this peace." Chen's gaze was heavy. "Then let's make sure we don't fail that test." The final reflection. That evening, Sarah returned once more to the memorial on the Concordant station. The stars outside glittered like an ocean of eyes. She looked up at her mother's crystal face. "Mom," she whispered, "the galaxy isn't done with us yet, but I think you'd be proud. We built something worth defending." The soft hum of the station filled the silence. She smiled faintly, tears catching the light. "And if they ever forget what humans can do, we'll remind them." She turned away, the reflection of her mother's statue fading behind her as the stars grew brighter. Outside the viewport, far in the dark, something vast shifted, an outline half seen like a planet awakening. A single pulse of blue light flickered across the void, 3 short bursts, one long. The same signal as before. Across the galaxy, the Federation thrived under humanity's guidance. But in the corners of space where no ship had flown, ancient machines stirred once more. And in the memory of every human, one promise endured. The galaxy once severed humanity from its heart. Humanity responded by giving it a soul.